Hello everybody, it's me, Ghost Bunny, and today I'm going to be reading chapter 5 of Heaven of Visual's Blessing. It's been a while since I sat and read for you guys, so here I am. I want to actually finish reading Heaven of Visual's Blessing. I love it, but, like most people, I haven't really gotten around to read it, and now that I finally have it, I do want to finally finish it. I'm on chapter 5, like I just said. This volume specifically has 11 chapters, so we're borderline, like basically already on the halfway point. So yes, I do want to finish it because, well, yeah, I just want to finish it. I like it. I just want to finish it because it's fun. I don't know. I also I want to know what happens later, so I'm nosy like that. But yeah, with that being said, let me just give out my usual disclaimers, and that is one. I have no affiliations with MXTX nor 7Cs. This is not an official audiobook. This is just me reading for the funsies of reading, because for enjoyment, for the sake of enjoyment. That's just the case. And second, I am not a native Chinese speaker, so yes. There's gonna be some names that I'm going to be pronouncing not right because, yeah, I'm not even close to being fluent to Chinese speaker. Also, you guys are probably going to hear some construction in the background. This isn't part of my usual disclaimers, pero hoy, specifically today, you guys are going to be hearing a lot of background noises, like you can probably hear right now. I'm going to try to read louder so you guys can probably hear me more than you know, the sounds. Pero, yeah, that's just going to be something that sadly enough we're gonna have to deal with. I'm so sorry. Um, pero yeah. Oh yeah, and yes, I do speak English. Pero when it comes to reading, I don't know why my reading is just chaos. I mess up words. I'm just a disaster reading. So yeah. Let me just start my reading, okay? Like I said, I'm gonna be reading chapter 5 of Heaven Official's Blessing. The chapter is called Red Clad Ghost, the Burning of the Martial and Civil Temples. So yeah, let's begin. On the face of the boy, as Shilian had first suspected, there was a field of serious burn scars. Except beneath the bloody scars, there were traces of 3 or 4 tiny faces. Those faces were no bigger than the palm of a baby, and they were scattered crookedly across his cheeks and forehead. After being burned, the features on each tiny face were shriveled in pain, as if screaming in agony. The sight of these weird screaming faces squeezing and squirming on a regular human face was indeed more horrifying than any demon. Shillian felt as though he were plunged into a nightmare the instant he saw this boy's face. A fear so immense paralyzed him until he couldn't recall standing up, nor tell what the expression on his face was. But it must have been intimidating. The boy was already on tenterhooks when he removed his bandages at that hesitant, slow pace. After seeing Shilia's reaction, he took a couple of steps back as if aware of Shilia's inability to accept that face of his. He suddenly covered his horrifying face and leapt up from the ground, then let out a shout and fled into the deep woods. Shilian finally came around and shouted, "Wait!" he called as he chased after him. "Wait, come back!" But Shilian had been dumbstruck for a good moment before he came around. The boy was obviously familiar with the mountain path and used to escaping in the dark, so it took him no time to vanish completely. No matter how Shilian yelled for him, he wouldn't show himself. Also, I'm probably gonna put like a screenshot right here so you guys can see it. Pero right, you can see our sweet bandaged boy you know, all bandaged up. I've read the manhwa. I do have to get the lensing. I think it's called. I was reading it when it was on Billy Comics. So it's been a while that I haven't read the manhwa. Pero I was reading the manhwa when it was there, and from what I remember, the art is beautiful, and I've seen the donghua, and the donghua also is beautiful. This scene here in the book is, at least in my opinion, a lot. It's very impactful. It's very impactful. The detailing is just absolutely masterful. Like, holy, it's just beautiful. Like, oh my god. Like, you can see, like, they legitimately look like faces, and it's like, it's beautiful. It's just, but yeah, continuing. There was no one around to help. There was no way he could contact the others through the array. I skipped a whole paragraph, damn. There was no one around to help Shilian's search, and his powers had been exhausted by now, so there was no way he could contact the others through the array. He ran all over the mountain searching for a good part of an hour to no avail. A cold breeze blew past and cleared his mind a little, knowing that running around aimlessly like a headless fly served no purpose. Shilian forced himself to calm down. Maybe he'll go back to to Xiaoying's body, Shilian thought as he returned to the Mingguang temple. But then he stopped in his tracks. Many Many men dressed in black with grave expressions had gathered in the woods, at the back of the temple, and they were in the midst of carefully unloading those 40-something upside down corpses. A tall man with folded arms was standing before the woods, overseeing the operation. When he turned his head around, it was the exquisite yet cold face of the youth. It was Fu Yao. It looked like he had made a trip back and brought a number of helping hands along from the palace of Chuanzhen. Shilian was about to speak, but was interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind him. Nan Feng had returned from sending the villagers away. Upon seeing the situation at hand, Nan Feng glanced at Fu Yao and said, "Didn't you run away?" The comment was not pleasant to the ears, and Fu Yao raised his eyebrows in displeasure. Shilian didn't want them to start arguing or another argument at a time like this, so he said, "I asked him to find reinforcements." Nan Fen sneered. "Well, where are they? I thought you could at least ask your general to come personally." Hmm? Hmm? Fu Yao replied coldly. "When I went back, I heard General Pei Jr. had already come to the scene, so I didn't bother our general. And if I had, he'd probably be too busy to come anyways." Actually, based on Shilian's understanding of Muchin, Shilian was pretty sure that he wouldn't come even if he had the time. But under the present circumstances, there wasn't time to dwell on that. He said tiredly, Stop your fighting for a moment, please, and help me find the banished boy, please." Nanfeng frowned. "Wasn't he guarding that girl's body with you earlier?" I scared him off after asking him to remove his bandages," Chilean replied. Fu Yao. Yeah, Fu Yao smirked. "Please, your cross-dressing isn't that terrifying," Chilean sighed. "It's my fault for being in a stupor. Miss Xiaoying's death was already a big shock to him. He probably couldn't take the blow of thinking that I was scared of his face, so he ran off." Fu Yao wrinkled his nose. "Is he like really that ugly? Like, be honest with me. He's ugly." "It's not a matter of ugliness," so he didn't deny it. Chilean replied. He has the human face disease." Hearing those three words, both Nanfeng and Fu Yao froze. They finally understood why Chilean was shocked. 800 years ago, a plague swept through the kingdom of Xianle, and it wiped out the nation. Those who caught the plague would first develop small warts all over their bodies, and the warts swelled. Well, as the warts swell, the skin would grow rough. The swollen parts would slowly grow more uneven, with three indentations and one protrusion, just like eyes, mouth, noses. The facial features would then metamorphose until the warts eventually started to get the shape of a human face. If they were left alone, more and more faces would grow on their bodies. It was said some of these human faces, once fully formed, could speak and even scream. They called this the human face disease. And if you had enough of those faces and enough of them could sing, they could probably have a one-man chorus of ear-curdling wails. That's how they probably sounded. Terrifying. Fu Yao's expression went through a myriad of changes as he dropped his folded arms. That's impossible. It was exterminated hundreds of years ago. There's no way it could reappear. If I'm not mistaken, Shi Yan only said. Dan Feng and Fu Yao couldn't refute him. I'm not mistaken, Shilian only said. Nan Feng and Fu Yao couldn't refute him. No one could refute this if it came from Shilian himself. Shilian continued. There are many burn scars on his face, probably from self-inflicting burns to get rid of the faces. The first reaction of those who contracted the disease was usually to slice off their face with knives or burn them away with fire. They would use any means possible to rid themselves of those lesions. Nan Feng's voice turned solemn. The boy is probably not a normal human being then. He has to be at least a few hundred years old. All else aside, is he contagious? Even though this was a severe headache, it was a question. Shilian considered calmly and logically, so he replied with conviction. No, the human face disease is highly contagious. If it were still contagious, then the entire mountain would have been infected by this point. Considering how long he has been living here, his condition should already be, well, cured. Only the scars remain. They couldn't afford to be careless. Fu Yao seemed to have some real influence in the palace of Shuanzhen and was able to call forth capable hands to help with the search. But no matter how deep they dug or how far they looked, they could not find any trace of the bandaged boy. Perhaps he had already fled Mount Yujun and vanished into the sea of people. The best they could do now was to return to the heavens, request that the palace of Lingwen conduct a search and wait for news. Fortunately, the boy was not contagious, but Shi Lian thought of how horrifying he looked. If he was discovered after he left the mountains, he might end up hunted as a monster. It was best that they find him soon. Without further delay, Shi Lian picked up Xiao Ying's body and descended the mountains. Since he was slightly out of it, he didn't realize he brought the body into the tea shop until the tea master yelled at him. Shi Lian immediately apologized and went back out to entrust Xiao Ying's burial to someone else before re-entering the tea shop. After settling everything, he sat down and heaved a soundless sigh. This case was finally over, but Chilean thought that the few days since he ascended felt longer than an entire year of collecting scraps in the mountain in the mortal realm. Climbing, jumping, flying, screaming, tumbling, disguising, and performing, his bones were going to collapse. Even then, there was still many mysteries and aftermaths left for him to deal with. Maybe he'd raise the barred banner and roam the world, telling tales of how collecting scraps was better than ascension. Fu Yao lifted the hem of his robe and sat down next to him. Alas, he could no longer keep it in and rolled his eyes. How much longer are you gonna wear that thing? It felt incredibly endearing somehow to see his eyes roll. Shilian finally took off the wedding dress, wiped away his makeup, and then realized dejectedly. Was I talking to General Pei Jr. in this dress this whole time? Nothing. Why did you remind me? Probably because you looked so obviously happy in it, Fuyao replied. After running errands all day, Nanfeng finally sat down for a rest too. Don't worry about it, General Pei. General Pei. Don't worry about it. General Pei won't care. General Pei Jr. won't care, at least. You can dress 10 times weirder and he won't tell anyone when he goes back. He probably won't, but I will definitely do. I am a gossiping boy. Shilian was grateful for all the errands this junior official had run and poured him some tea. He thought about how cool-headed General Pei Jr. was in the face of Xuanji's madness and commented, General Pei Jr. is certainly calm and collected, very composed. Nanfeng took a sip of his tea and said, he may look well-mannered, but he is, like his ancestors, difficult to deal with. This was something Shilian could of course see. Unbelievably enough, Fu Yao agreed too. General Pei Jr. is a Nauvoo ascendant of the last couple hundred years, but he's got a strong tailwind and climbed the ladder pretty fast. When he was appointed deputy general by General Pei, he was barely 20 years old. Do you know what he did? What? Shilian asked. He slaughtered an entire city, Fuyao replied coldly. Shilian looked thoughtful and thoughtful on hearing this, but he wasn't surprised. In the upper courts, kings and generals roamed regarding fighting for, and protecting of one's land. It was said that the success of a general was built on the bones of billions. To reach godhood, one must first become a hero. But the path a hero walks was always bloody. Fuyao continued, "In the upper court, there aren't many who are trustworthy and worth meeting." So Yan thought it funny that Fu Yao sounded like he was speaking from experience and cautioning a newcomer. He wondered if Fu Yao only spoke because he had been bullied in the heavenly realm himself and the experience had affected him deeply. But then again, even though Shilian had ascended 3 times, he never stuck around for long. So when it came to understanding the gods, he might actually know less than these junior officials. Nanfeng, on the other hand, seemed to strongly disagree. Don't listen to such inflammatory statements. There's good and bad everywhere. There are still a number of trustworthy officials in the heavens. Trustworthy officials? Do you mean your general? Hmm? Fuyao sneered. Nanfeng responded, I don't know about my general, but definitely not yours. Shiliang was long used to this kind of situation, and with other things on his mind, he didn't have the energy to pull them apart. The case in the north had concluded. The first thing Shilian did upon returning to the heavens was to report the banished boy to the palace of Ling Wen and place a request to search for him. Ling Wen took the request with a grave expression. I will do my utmost to find him. Truly, I did not think this journey up to the north would open such a giant can of worms. Thank you for your hard work, Your Highness. Shilian replied, I have the 2 junior officials who volunteered to help to thank, and General Pei Jr. as well. I am sincerely grateful. This all came from the relationship troubles caused by old Pei himself. So of course Junior has to take care of it. He's used to it, so there's no need to thank him. Everything's good. Ling Wen said. If your highness is not busy, please enter the communication array. We are to have a meeting regarding what had transpired. Julian also had many questions he'd liked answers to. After leaving the palace of Ling Wen, he wandered about and found a small stone bridge. The stone bridge crossed a small gurgling stream with crystal clear waters. He could see the clouds drifting under the water and through the flowing waters and clouds. There stood the rising and falling mountain ranges as well as the vast, squarely erect cities of the mortal realm. This is a good place, Shilian thought. And so he sat on the head of the bridge, mouthed the password, and entered the communication array. They don't say what the password is, but I'm assuming the password is Junguwu, my sweet God, I love you. You're the one and only one and only. I love you, XOXO. Surprisingly, all in caps. But yeah. It was one of those rare times when the communication array was bursting with liveliness, with voices echoing and reverberating from all directions. The first thing he heard was Fenxing swearing. Yeah. Holy have you all picked up mountain for that ceiling yet? That Ji is a mad woman no matter what we ask. She only screams to see General Pei and tells us nothing useful about the location of the green ghost Qirong. General Pei responded. General Pei Jr. responded, sorry. General Ji has always been stubborn and intense. Fenxing yelled angrily. General Pei Jr., is your General Pei back yet? Let her meet him. Then get that green ghost Qirong's location out of her and get rid of her. Fenxing had never been good with the women, and you could clearly tell. And Chilean felt sorry that he was the one given the task of interrogation. General Pei Jr. replied, it doesn't matter even if they meet. She'll just become more insane. A voice came through. Another round of upside down corpses? Chirong really is too crass. Disgusting. Even the ghost Ram thinks he's vulgar. That means he truly is very much so. Words between the officials flew seamlessly around in the array, and it was clear that they were all on familiar terms with one another. As a newcomer who'd only just ascended after, an 800 or so year absence, Shilian should have laid low and remained silent, but after a while he couldn't resist himself and, he had to do it. He had to do him like that. Sorry, not sorry. He gotta do it. Gotta do what you gotta do. Everyone, what was the upside down corpse? Was Green Ghost Chirong in the area too? Chilean rarely spoke in the communication array, so his voice was foreign to many, and the officials did not know whether to respond. Surprisingly enough, the first to answer him was Ben Shin. Gringo's Chirong wasn't at Mount Yujun. However, the upside down corpses were offering Xuanji presented to him as per his orders. Xuanji is a subordinate of the Green Ghost? Chilean asked. Correct, General Pei Jr. replied. Xuan Ji passed away many hundreds of years ago. She held a grudge but was too powerless to stir up havoc until just over 100 years ago when General Ghost Qirong took a liking to her and took her under his wing. Only then did her spiritual powers improve by leaps and bounds. Okay, look, what he really meant, to be fair, what he really meant was that the chaos Xuanji caused was not General Pei's fault, because she wasn't originally this strong. All blame should go to Green Ghost Shirong. Instead, since he was the one who took her under his wing, took under his command, and gave her the power to cause harm, everyone was already of the opinion that the sin was all General Pei's to bear. Though no one said it out loud, yet he noticed and spoke of it so openly in this reminder that it shut everyone up and made them hide their real thoughts deep within. Shilian then spoke up again. Has Mount Yujun been thoroughly inspected? What about the child spirit? This time Muchi's voice rang out. He said in an instructable tone, Child spirit? What child spirit? Shilian realized Fu Yao must have not reported every detail. Maybe his volunteering to help was not even done in secret. So without mentioning Fu Yao to spare him any unnecessary problems, Shilian explained, when I was in the wedding sedan, I heard the giggles of a child who sang nursery rhymes as a word of caution. The two junior officials next to me didn't notice, but which means that this child spirit must have remarkable powers. There is no child spirit found on Mount Yujun, Muchin stated. Shilian was confused. Perhaps the child spirit had come specifically just to warn him. Thinking of this, Shilian was suddenly reminded of another matter that had been on his mind all this time. He hasn't stopped thinking about that smexy boy, that smexy man. He asked, speaking of which, I met a young man who can control silver butterflies at Mount Yujun. Does anyone know who he is? The noisy commotion array suddenly fell completely silent. Shilian was expecting this reaction, so he simply waited patiently. A moment later, Ling Wen asked, Your Highness, what did you just say now? Mu Qing said coldly, He just said that he met Hua Cheng. Upon finally learning the name of the young man in red, Shilian felt his spirits lift unexpectedly. He smiled. So he's called Hua Cheng. It's a fitting name for him. The tone of Shilian's voice rendered all the officials even more speechless. Another moment passed before Ling Wen cleared her throat. Your Highness, have you ever heard of the four calamities? Much ashamed, I only know of the four famous tales, Shilian thought himself. The so-called four tales refer to the extravagant stories of the deeds of the four gods prior to their ascension. The young lord who poured wine, the prince who pleased God, the general who snapped his sword, and the princess who slit her throat. Of course, the prince who pleased God allude to the awe-inspiring display of the crown prince of Shanle upon the grand avenue of divine might. Having one's name among the four famous tales did not necessarily indicate that those four were the strongest of the gods. The four famous tales were as such simply because they were the most well-known and most spoken of. Shilian had always been slow on the uptake when it came to the news from the outside world. He could He could even be said to be out of touch with the outside world and ignorant to its affairs. He only knew the tale of the four famous. He only knew the four famous tales because, let's be honest, he was one of the four. The Four Calamities was probably something that grew popular later, but Chilean had never heard of that term before. Since it included the term, the word calamity, it couldn't be anything good. Much ashamed, but I've never heard of them. Guess they're not that cool. Womp womp, sad for them. Boo-hoo. Chilean said, "Who are the Four Calamities?" Muchi responded coolly, "Your Highness, walked the mortal realm for hundreds of years, and yet you are still so ill informed. I'm really curious. So, just, just to know what you've been up to. What have you been doing all this time? Hmm? Eating, sleeping, busking, collecting junk. Duh. What else want to be doing?" Julian smiled. "It's not easy being mortal. There are plenty of things to busy myself with, and they're all complicated. It's not easier than being a heavenly official. Okay?" "Please remember, Your Highness," Lingwen said, "the four calamities are ship sinking black water, night touring green lantern, white cloth calamity, and crimson red safflower. They are the four ghost king of the ghost realm who cause endless headaches for all of us in the heavenly realm. Humans become gods when they ascend, ghosts when they fall. The gods created heaven to reside in, drawing a clear boundary between themselves and mortals. They watched from above and ruled from beyond reach. The ghost realm, on the other hand, was not separated from the mortal realm. Monsters, demons, ghosts, and mortals all shared one earth. Some ghosts hid in the darkness, and some pretended to be humans as they walked amongst the people and roamed the mortal realm in disguise. Ling Wen continued. Ship sinking black water refers to a water ghost. Although he has reached supreme status, he's fairly low key and rarely starts trouble. Not many have seen him, so I wouldn't judge you. I wouldn't pay any mind, to be fair. Night touring Green Lantern refers to that vocal corpse hanging green ghost Chirong. He's the only one in the four not yet a supreme. He's likely included because he always causes trouble and he's annoying as fuck. Or maybe because, four names are easier to remember, so he's just there to pad the numbers. Well, we'll skip him too. The white clad, you know, the white cloth calamity should be someone, well, Your Highness is familiar with. He's also known as White No Face. Hearing the name, Shilian, who was sitting on the stone bridge, suddenly felt a stab of pain in his heart that spread all over his body. His hands began to shake, and he unconsciously clenched them into fists. Of course, he was familiar. They say that when a supreme is born, it can destroy an entire nation and throw the world into chaos. The first country White No Face destroyed was none other than Xianle. Xinliang remained silent, and Ling Wen continued. "In any case, White No Face is already defeated. Even if he still exists somewhere in the world, it's now past his time in the limelight. Your Highness, the silver butterflies you saw at the Mount Yujun are also called wraith butterflies. Their master is the last of the four, and one the world does not want to incur the wrath of. Crimson Red Sunflower Hua Cheng." Even the heavens, notorious, was the word to describe the heavenly emperor and the crown prince of Shenle. Although the meaning of notoriety was completely different between the two, the word still resonated equality. However, in the ghost realm, there was only one worthy of being called notorious, and that was Hua Cheng. If you wanted to learn about a god, simply walk into his temple and take a look at the way he was dressed, at the weapons he wielded, and you'd more or less understand him. If you wanted to know more, simply listen to folk tales, plays, and stories passed down by word of mouth. A god's mortal past and deeds were well documented. Ghosts, on the other hand, not so much. The kinds of person they were while still alive, and their appearance, well, at present was all a mystery. The name Hua Cheng was very obviously fake, and his appearance, well, most likely fake too. A small note here: Hua Cheng means flower city, so apparently to them it sounded fake as fuck. Although it could have been his real name, who knows? He could just be flat out just giving his name. Maybe he is that cocky. But who am I to judge? They know more than I do. They're the ones who are the gods and whatnot. I'm just a simple mortal here, being your yeller in the middle of the town square, screaming about heavenly official stuff. Hear he style, baby. But yeah, in the rumors, he was sometimes a twisted boy given to to capricious mood changes. Sometimes a gentle and mattered, handsome young man. Sometimes a gorgeous seductress with a venomous heart. Anything goes, to be fair. And for his true self, well, the only thing that one could be sure of was that he dressed in red, and often appeared alongside a bloodbath with silver butterflies, you know, flitting his between his sleeves. And when it came to Hua Cheng's backstory, well, there was an endless different versions. There were so many different versions. Some would say he was born without a right eye and was bullied and humiliated for it since birth, so he was filled with hatred for the world. Sorry. Some say he was a young soldier who died in a lost battle for his country and later came to walk the earth in resentment. Some say he was a fool who was tormented by the death of his love. Some even say he was a monster. In the moment, outrageous virgin supposedly, only supposedly, watching ascended and became a god, but immediately jumped back down on his own and became a ghost. But that version wasn't widespread. No one knew if it was true or false, and not many believed that. It had to be false, though. Even if it were true, it'd be a complete embarrassment for the heavens if someone ditched the heavenly official role to become a ghost of all things. Either way, the more diverse the stories were, the more mystery he was shrouded in. There were also many reasons for the gods to fear Hua Cheng. For example, his behavior was unpredictable. Sometimes he would carry out a massacre in cold blood, and sometimes he would do odd acts of kindness. He also wielded a great deal of influence in the mortal realm and had legions of followers. That's right. Mortals worshipped gods to ask for blessings and protection so they could escape the evils from the ghost realm, and that was how the gods came to gain more gain more followers. Yet watching a ghost had such a large following on Earth that he could influence the world single-handedly. There is a story. Well, here is a story that must be told. When Hua Cheng first appeared, he did something notorious. He openly charged 35. Well, openly charged. Yeah, openly challenged. He openly challenged 35 heavenly officials. The challenge was to spar with the martial gods and to debate with the civil gods. 33 of the 35 thought it was hilarious, but were also infuriated enough to take up his challenge, thinking they could join forces to teach this little devil a thing or two. The first to step up to the plate were the martial gods. The martial gods were the strongest of the heavenly officials. Each had plenty of believers, and they were all powerful. In the face of the newborn ghost, it was a sure win, right? Yet unexpectedly, it turned out to be a complete annihilation after just one battle. Even the weapons were completely smashed to pieces by Hua Cheng's freakish Smithkar, the weapon. It was only after the battle that they found out Hua Cheng was born of Mount Tonglu. Mount Tonglu was a volcano, and within its mountains domain, there was a city called Gu. This city of Gu wasn't a place where people cultivated poison, but rather the city itself was a great poison. Every few hundreds of years, tens of thousands of ghosts descended upon the city of Gu to butcher one another, until at least one remained, and thus was the venom brewed. It usually ended in complete elimination, but those few who were capable enough to make it out alive would emerge as the devil incarnate. Only two such ghosts had ever made it out of the city of Gu in the past several centuries, and as expected, those two both became well-known ghost kings. Hua Cheng, unsurprisingly, was one of them. After the defeat of the martial gods, it came time for the civil gods to rise to the challenge. Surely Hua Chen could fight, but not debate. Right? Right? Unfortunately for the civil cause, they could not defeat him. Hua Cheng, well, could recite the classics and debate the contemporaries. He was sometimes polite, sometimes vicious, sometimes unyielding, sometimes incisive, and sometimes quibbling. He was impenetrably sharp. His arguments flawless, absolutely flawless. He verbally abused the civil gods from top to bottom, past to present, and infuriated them so much that they puked blood and washed the skies red. Hua Chen gained fame overnight. However, that alone wasn't enough to call him scary. What was scary was the after the challenge. Hua Chen demanded all 33 officials make good on their word. Before the challenge, it was decided that if Hua Chen, were to lose, he would offer up his own ashes. If the officials were to lose, they must descend from the heavens and return to being mortals. If it weren't for his arrogant attitude and his decisive stake and the conviction of the 33 officials, then they probably wouldn't have lost. To be fair, they wouldn't have even accepted such terms to begin with. However, not a single heavenly official voluntarily honored the terms. It was humiliating to renege to on their bet. But here's the thing: when they thought about it, if only one of them was defeated, it'd be an embarrassment. But if all of them were defeated and humiliated, then well, no one would lose face. They could even turn around and mock the other party. So they all came to a tactic, understanding that they'd pretend. Well, let's just say nothing happened. It's our word against his. Who's gonna believe who? Huh? Mortals were forgetful anyways. They would forget all about, this in like 50 or so years. And you know what? They weren't wrong. Well, about the mortals. They were definitely wrong about watching. Definitely wrong about watching. The gods refused to fulfill their promise. Well, that's fine. He would just, give them a helping hand. It's fine. It's Gucci, baby. I'm here. I'll give you a little hand. I'm here. I'm your loyal friend. Thus, Hua Chen burned every single temple and shrine of all 33 gods. This was the stuff of nightmares for all the gods in the heavens. The red-clad ghost burning of the 33 martial and civil god temples. Temples and followers were the main source of power for the heavenly officials. Where would followers go to pray if there was no temples? If they didn't pray, there wouldn't be merits. The massive loss of temples and merits greatly injured the heavens. To rebuild would take at least hundreds of years, and even then, they wouldn't be the same as before. This was a catastrophe greater than failing in transcending tribulations. It was worse than that. The number of temples and shrines of these heavenly officials combined was at least in the tens of thousands. But watching, he managed to burn them all in a singular night, in one night. How? No one knew. But he did it. Pure madness. The gods cried foul to the heavenly emperor, but there was nothing he could do. The heavenly officials themselves accepted the challenge at the terms, and Hua Chen was cunning enough to not only destroy temples without hurting anybody. It was as if he dug a hole and asked the gods to jump, and the gods themselves dug the hole bigger and dove in. Within the way things were, what more could they have done? At first, 33 heavenly officials had wanted to show the world the defeat of the crazed little devil, so they broadcasted the challenge into the dreams of many royals and nobles to display their strength and might before their most devout believers. But all the royals and nobles saw was, well, the miserable defeat. When the mortals woke up, they switched from worshipping heavenly officials to worshipping the ghosts. That ghost, to be exact. The heavenly officials, who lost both their temples and believers, soon grew weaker and weaker until they were erased from existence. It wasn't until a new wave of ascensions that those empty positions were finally filled again. Ever since then, the name Hua Cheng was feared in the heavens. Even just hearing a mention of the red robes or silver butterflies brought cold sweat to many, except for Shilian, that just got nice and horny. Some feared he would challenge them and burn their temples if they were to incur his displeasure. Some were blackmailed into silence and inaction because he had them basically by the balls, and some even oddly respected him because of how wide his reach was in the mortal realm. Sometimes they even had to ask him for help paving the way for them while they carried on, with their duties. This went on for a long time, and many heavenly officials developed a peculiar sort of admiration for him. Thus, the heavens feared, hated, and well respected this ghost king. Among the 35 gods who were challenged, the two who declined were General Xuan, aka wait, yeah, declined were General Xuan Zhen, aka Mu Qing, and General Nanyang, aka Fenxin. They thought the challenge was beneath them, and they didn't want to take it. Sorry. They thought the challenge was beneath them and didn't care to take it. Turned out, that was the right decision to make. But even then, Watson hadn't forgotten about those two. No, 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 don't you dare get him mistaken for another person, because no, he got that good memory. He's got that elephant memory. Many Zhongzhuang festival patrols ended in fists and blood, with both parties crossed whenever those parties would cross paths with each other, and those crazy maniacal silver butterflies left an everlasting impression on both men. Hearing this, Xilian thought of that fluttering silver butterfly that sparkled and danced adorably around him in delight. He couldn't picture it as described in the rumors. Was that little silver butterfly really that scary? Cillian wondered. It wasn't that bad. It was kind of cute. And well, that is the end of chapter 5. Ta-da! Yay! Hopefully you guys liked it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully the construction in the background didn't bother that much. I'm begging that you heard more of me than the actual construction. But oh, yes, I'm sorry about that. Other than that, I hope you guys liked it. Hope you guys liked this chapter. It was very, very interesting. We finally got the name drop. Hua Chang. Oh yes, Papito. That means really soon we might actually get a certain red dressed baby sexy boy coming soon. But oh yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and all that YouTube stuff. I am planning on keeping the PNG tubing, the PNG tuber Sona thing for readings, and having my VTuber self for reactions. I don't. For a while, I was thinking maybe I should use the VTubing for both, but I don't know. I seem to. I don't know. I like this. You can comment if you think the PNG or the VTuber is better for reading. I find this one better. But I'm up to taking your constructive criticism. But like I said earlier, like, comment, subscribe, the YouTube shenanigans and all that. And yeah, if you guys are liking my reading and have not heard the previous ones, you can go. I have a playlist dedicated to Heaven Official's Blessing, so you guys can hear the first chapters and all that. Pero with that being said, bye bye.